Welcome to a live episode of the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show brought to you by Awful Announcing, where, unlike Pat McAfee, I don't even need to dress up to pretend that I'm a old white guy in sports media with tired takes. I'm Ben Axelrod. He is Brendon Kleen. And on today's show, we are going to go over Awful Announcing's second annual podcast power list. This is Brendon's brainchild. We ran the inaugural podcast power list last year, got a lot of positive reaction. Brendon, this one got a ton of reaction. This got from a traffic standpoint, from an engagement standpoint, it seemed like the list really took off this year. So as the mastermind behind this, what feedback have you noticed, and what are your overall takeaways from this year's list of podcasters?
Well, if we want to just jump right into the reaction, then the reaction is that Pardon My Take was not on the list. I mean, that seems, if you put out a podcast list, the number one piece of reaction is going to be whether or not it had Pardon My Take on it and why. I feel like that's my main lesson about sports podcasting in 2025. We can talk about that. The answer is incredibly obvious, and I can read the very beautifully eloquent glaze that I delivered for that show last year on this list, where a PFT commenter got to be on the graphic. We can do that later, but yeah, I mean, look, it's funny to do, like, already doing this list, Ben. It's like, this is sports podcasting is just kind of sports content now. So I don't even know what the difference already feel it is. Like, that distinction is dying, and I think if we look back in a year from now, I can safely predict that distinction, that the line between sports podcast versus all the other types of content is going to be even less relevant to us. So it's kind of a funny thing to categorize or even cover or talk about, but I think that kind of speaks to why we did this, because these people who we're talking about here, the companies, the shows, the networks, these are like the place for people to get sports coverage now, and the most famous and like well-known figures behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an accompanying piece, a column about Bill Simmons that kind of went back to when he launched the Bill Simmons podcast, the independent version or the Ringer version in 2015. And that's what we'll get to that, I know, but that was something that stood out, was like how novel it seemed at the time that, like, Bill Simmons was going independent and that his anchor was a podcast. And now that is just what everybody does. That is just the blueprint. That is, if you were in sports media, especially if you're covering college football, you have a podcast. And so that's something that stood out to me. Yeah, let's get the Pardon My Take thing out of the way. So, I mean, the primary reason they weren't on this year's list was they were on last year's list. Like, this is largely going to be a new list each year. It's not necessarily a rising stars list, but I think, largely it will be like, it's not going to be the same people every year. There are some podcasts that are just so established, like, you don't really even need to say, like, yeah, they're movers and shakers in this space. You did have some repeats, though. You had Bill Simmons, you had Sarah Spain, got a lot of attention. So what distinguished those as repeats as opposed to Pardon My Take?
Yeah, look, the repeats were those two that you mentioned, Sirius XM, if we want to really go down, The Athletic, and The Volume. I think those are the holdovers. And really the point is, like, I want to also be representative of the space or the company or the niche that somebody's filling, right? So, like, to address this exact example, Barstool is still here. Dave Portnoy took the spot more so than, like, whoever else on this list took the spot, right? And yeah, like, I think the other part of this is, the Kelseys, Shannon Sharp, Pat McAfee. These are also people who were on the first one that were not on this year. Is that because Pat McAfee is irrelevant in 2025 versus 2024? No, that would be stupid for me to ever make an argument about. But at the same time, Pat McAfee had a relatively quiet 2025 compared with 2024, which was the first full calendar year that he was on ESPN. Obviously, all of the noise and controversy and attention that show grabbed, the headlines that it made with the Aaron Rodgers interviews or the battles with management, all that kind of stuff. 2025, not quite so much in this case, so that's why Pat's not on it, right? But yeah, I mean, look, back to the Barstool side, I think that Portnoy in this particular case is somebody who, by striking the Fox Sports deal, by, for instance, stealing away Ryan Russillo, like he was the person at Barstool as its owner and its de facto, overall ruler that kind of hit the hardest. Like, Pardon My Take just kept churning out super popular podcast episodes, but did they make a headline this year? I mean, not really. So that's literally all that it is. I think Pardon My Take, as we'll get to in our closing segment when we talk about Mount Rushmore of this industry, they don't need me to write about how groundbreaking and important they are. I think they know. So they're fans. I appreciate the the legions of people coming to defend them, but I think they're good. I think they've got all they need.
Yeah, and they were on our sports media list of the most influential sports media personalities of the last 25 years. Like there is a lot of deference here when it comes to Pardon My Take. We are well aware of their space in the industry. And yeah, I don't think we really need to defend that part of it much further. So each year we've done this now, so 2 years, there's kind of been a through line on each list. Last year, it was Shannon Sharp. He was kind of the headliner and the theme, I'd say, of the podcast list. This year, it was Bill Simmons. One, was there any thought to anybody else? Like, did you have a debate about whether it should be Bill, whether it should be Pablo Torre, whether it could be somebody else? And then two, what ultimately led to Bill getting the nod as far as this year's, like I said, kind of headliner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing to talk through, right? So this isn't a ranking. Like, let's be clear about that. Mm-hmm. I do try to, I'm building an article. Like, I want people to click in here and read through it. This year, we got a lot of feedback and answers from the people who were on the list, the honorees themselves, about their thoughts on the industry. So I wanted to intersperse people whose perspectives we got in with people whose we didn't and all that. So like that's kind of the idea, grouping people together, like the athletes versus the executives versus whatever, like that. There's kind of blocks of different groups that you can kind of see here. But yeah, it's similar to with Shannon Sharp last year where it was like, hey, athlete hosts are the story here. The idea of making podcasting your career separate from mainstream corporate media. Obviously Shannon was on First Take last year, but leaving FS1 and making it with Nightcap and with Club Shay Shay along with the Cat Williams interview was a story in and of itself. With Simmons this year, to me, it's some of the staying power and the creative evolution that you wrote about, but it's also from a industry standpoint, it really, a lot of it is just that Netflix deal. The ability to kind of continually see and create the future of what sports content is, I think is what has made Simmons so relevant and important for his whole career. He constantly does this, and I feel like the Netflix deal where, they're not going to be exclusive to Netflix, these Ringer podcasts. It's not like they're creating wholly new content the way, for instance, The Athletic is for Amazon. But it is, everyone has been expecting podcasts to go on streamers. Kill Tony did it. There's some smaller examples that you can point to, and that's not even really a podcast in my opinion. But Simmons doing this by putting shows on a streamer and being the first mover there, it's just, again, this guy making it happen and kind of showing the future, even as his career, enters a later stage. And as he would say, he's at a different point in his career. He loves to say that. Like, he is that, but yet he still continues to innovate. So that's why I put him at the top of it this time.
Yeah, you know what stood out to me in my column, kind of reflecting on a decade of the Ringer now, and a decade since Bill Simmons left ESPN, and how, I mean, in terms of like talents who have left ESPN and made their mark, I don't think anybody has a stronger case than what Bill Simmons has achieved post ESPN while remaining in the sports media space. What stood out to me is just how strategic he's been. It's, you know, I think we're on the same page, like in terms of like, yeah, like podcasting is now a medium that is just like television, that is just like radio. I mean, it's superseded radio. It's just it's an avenue. It's a media space. It's something people do. But a lot of it, I mean, hell, we do that. Like some of it is just you throw shit against the wall and you see what sticks and you keep going. And maybe you get some videos that get a lot of views. Maybe you find some topics that hit. I think for Bill, in terms of building out the Ringer and building out a podcasting network, like you saw the vision crystallize with this Netflix deal. It's like he wasn't just putting together a bunch of podcasts that were good. He was putting together a specific narrow, not narrow because there's variety, but a lane, a vision, like an offering that I could take this collection of podcasts and I could lease it to Netflix. This collection of podcasts focused on, you know, my podcast, the Bill Simmons podcast, the Zach Lowe podcast, all the Ringer fantasy shows, the rewatchables, the big picture, like all these, like they all fit under this pop culture sports Bill Simmons umbrella. And then I can take that and I can lease it out to Netflix and it becomes an offering. I have a hard time, even for a place like Barstool, which I think does a really great job with its podcasts and probably could, you know, reach a similar deal. I don't know if anybody has been as strategic as Bill Simmons and the Ringer have been over these last 10 years in terms of shaping the type of content that they want to put out and what they ultimately want to do with that content from a business standpoint.
I think we talked about that when this Netflix deal came down, that I had pointed out was how cohesive of a network Simmons has actually built there, where it checks all the boxes of the types of content that you would need if you're just kind of a culture consumer, and at the same time feels cohesive in like the tone and the style that it puts out. Like a Ringer show has a feel, you know. It's not just like he went on a big acquisition spree and bought up this popular sports host's show and this celebrity, and you know, it feels like, oh, this is the Ringer. This is from Bill Simmons' brain, you know? And the other big thing here, too, like when we talk about him, is in 2025, he signed a new contract this year, right? Like there was some chatter about would he depart, and I actually didn't even really talk about this in the list, but would he leave? Would there be other opportunities? Would he try to split time or whatever? And, you know, best we can tell from the limited reporting that was out there, one of the things that he kind of wanted on as part of his next opportunity with Spotify was video, right? That was the next frontier that he wanted to take this company into. And in short order, he not only did that and put together a really nice looking video product on those shows, but sold it away to the top bidder there, you know, with the Netflix deal. And that's the last thing I would point out there too of the Ringer is their content. Like, I feel bad making such a specific comparison, but it's the one that comes to mind. Like the volume feels like YouTube shows that all have a V in the corner, right?
Yeah.
The Ringer is like, you know, you've got bottom third graphics, you've got, you know, transitions, intro graphics packages and songs and music. It feels like TV, actually. And I think that sets it apart in a big way.
I mean, they have a studio. They have a full-on
Spotify
studio. Like it is.
They're not right, like you and I sitting in our offices. Right,
exactly. I do think we have a nice little setup here. I like our graphics, but I digress. Maybe we'll make it next year. What else stood out to you about this list? I guess specifically another topic that I know we wrote about was, where are we at with like athlete podcasts? Because we are in the sports media space. And we reached a point even last year where the athlete podcast market had gotten really, really saturated. And right now, in terms of current athletes with podcasts, it kind of seems to be few and far between that are really moving the needle on a consistent basis.
So the ones that I highlighted this year, athlete-wise, are Gilbert Arenas, Cam Newton, Andy Roddick, and the Bussin' with the Boys hosts, Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. That's it. And there's a bunch more I could have selected, right? Like that we could have highlighted and talked up here. But what I would say sets those ones apart, or is kind of a through line with those people, is one, like, to actually break through and cut through. Because, like, if we just listed off all the people in 2025, Ben, who started podcasts as former athletes and may have even had built up a decent audience, we would be sitting here all day just literally reading the names off, right? But what I think we're learning is to actually cut through, be viral, have a loyal following that actually cares what you have to say, rather than just tuning in because a clip goes viral and they know your face is. Like, you have to really be about this, study it, not only from a content and platform standpoint, but in a, like, what is my niche going to actually be standpoint. Like, I think Cam is a great example, right? Like, he is clearly aware that what he says about the mindset of quarterbacks and the experience of being a quarterback in the NFL really matters to people. Like, those always hit for him. He's a really good interviewer too. Like, I think you have to shout that out about Cam Newton. Gilbert Arenas, like, he's a troll. He wants to piss you off. And he actually has the creativity and the stamina and the patience to pull that off, right? I think that the Bussin' guys, like, they are just exhaustive. They put out so much content and understand kind of their lanes and the tone and the style that is going to work for them. And they've done a really good job of just, you really can only consume Bussin' with the Boys content and probably be hooked up for your week of what you're consuming. Like, that's how they've done it. And I think the other part of it too, like, we highlighted Dale Earnhardt Jr. last year. That was kind of the Andy Roddick slot in my mind this year, where if you just own a niche and you really, really cover it and do it instantaneously and find good partners and good avenues to put things out, like, you really can find success, even if it's NASCAR or tennis, because there's a big audience for those things if you're the only show in town, right? So I think that that's some of what's working, in my opinion, these days. But there's a lot of stuff that's just, in my opinion, like, I'm sure you would agree, Ben, like, just, I hear the show get announced. I never pay attention to it again. I have no idea if it's good, if it matters, if anyone cares about it. I guess they make money, but I think that the industry is kind of realizing, like, they're a dime a dozen, and we gotta get a little more creative with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like what happened to Mind the Game. Is Mind the Game still going on? It's like LeBron James had a podcast, and it's either still going on and I'm not aware of it, or it just came and went and nobody and that's like how saturated this market is.
Yeah, and like it's with Steve Nash now, and Amazon had some changes this year and whatever that was actually there. They had an executive on the list here, but like, I think that speaks to another example. Like, JJ Redick was a real talent in this space and had a knack for a lot of the things I'm talking about, and LeBron just is LeBron, right? Like, that's the disparity that I think perfectly encapsulates actual hits and kind of pushing forward with what this stuff can be versus just, like, you know, my face and my thoughts, and that'll carry me.
Yeah. I think Bussin' with the Boys is my favorite podcast I don't actually listen to. And I think it speaks to the rise those two have had. And look, I mean, you tease me all the time about listening to podcasts on 1.3 speed. Like, I need to go up to like 2.3 speed at this point. Like, I do not have room to add new podcasts to my rotation.
Yeah.
Especially like with Pablo Torre having breaking news every week and all. Like, I just don't have the time or the space. I'm unfortunately somebody who cannot write and listen to podcasts at the same time. So that takes out like 8 hours a day for me. But the Bussin' with the Boys guys found me. They found me via ESPN. Like, obviously I was aware of them. I'd follow their contract negotiations and some of their work. But now I see them on Get Up every Thursday. Like they found me. And I think that just speaks to like, not only what the success they have built with the podcast, but the brand they have built around the podcast, and the fact that once they did become de facto free agents, like that ESPN was jumping at the opportunity to get into business with them. In terms of like this isn't a rising stars list, but there is kind of some rising star spots. And to me, the Sports Gossip Show kind of filled that this year, where they were kind of a breakthrough podcast. I think they're only like a year old. To me, they were like one of those podcasts. It was like, okay, Charlotte Wilder left Meadowlark. She's trying out this new podcast now. Everybody has a podcast, but they really broke through. They have a deal with The Athletic. And what stands out to me about them is like, they're called the Sports Gossip Show. They talk about like relative, not salacious things, but a lot of focus on the Jordan Hudson type of stories, but they do it with a journalistic like mindset and a journalistic intent. It's almost, for lack of a better term, like it's not as journalistically ambitious as Pablo Torre finds out, but I do find there to be a lot of parallels, which is kind of funny because they also are under the Athletic banner now.
Well, funny or exactly the point, right? Like I think the Athletic was intentional there. I think, that it's a very interesting show. Like I obviously we cover some of their work because of the Jordan Hudson stuff and others, and like their chemistry is great. The show worked and clicked in that way immediately, I would say, and I think it's a niche that's worth highlighting. Obviously, I did it with this and Kylie Kelsey, I would say, as two kind of examples here, where like it or not, obviously, plenty of the feedback, it tends to be focused on the women who we cover at Awful Announcing because people are enraged by the mere presence of them. But the audience and the engagement and the popularity speaks for itself. And there is a real and growing thirst for content like this that is outside the lines in a different way than what Bob Lay was doing, right? Like it's sports tangential, it's sports cultural, and frankly, it's not that different from what the shit like Cam Newton is doing or Gilbert Arenas is doing. It's just we take it more seriously when those guys that we recognize from when they were wearing jerseys are doing it. I think you're right to point out that doing it in Kylie Kelsey's from her standpoint, like a first-person perspective, being in that world, or from the Sports Gossip ladies' standpoint, a journalistic angle, like it's a cool and creative entry point for that type of content. And so I think that we're only going to see more of that. And I didn't get to share all the answers. I could publish it as a Q&A because Madeline and Charlotte both filled out our questionnaire with exhaustive thoughts about a lot of this stuff, and they're betting on it big time, obviously, doing this full time themselves, and they see and feel it every day how much people want that type of stuff that, frankly, like, these traditional outlets just aren't really willing to touch or don't have the expertise and confidence in those spaces to touch, and these two shows are soaking that up big time.
So last year this was kind of an experiment. This year it's become a staple now. Now you're on the clock. Like now we have to have another podcast list for October 2026. As we look forward here, where do you see the state of the podcast industry? What trends are you looking at? What interests you as we look at the next 12 months here?
There's going to be a show that goes behind a paywall. Somebody's gonna be the one to do it, right? Like this Ringer Netflix deal that we focused on. Everybody, I interviewed Gilbert Arenas for a accompanying piece. He was open. He talked to a lot of these digital content outlets, streamers, whatever, about this stuff. I know numerous other shows have had those same types of conversations. I think one of the hiccups or the hitches on it is that these streaming companies, if they're going to do things that are live, they also want it to live on its own afterward. And you can kind of see that with what Netflix wanted from The Ringer, something like The Rewatchables. That's like the epitome of an evergreen show, right? It's literally about movies that are 40 years old. Whereas like if it's, let's use an example that's not even on the list, like Nightcap or Speakeasy, these other NFL guys who have put these live shows out, that's Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson, or it's Emmanuel Acho and LaShawn McCoy, like that it's kind of dead content the next day, right? It doesn't really, nobody's going to go back 3 months later and think, what did Ocho and Unk think about how Patrick Mahomes played in Week 12? Nobody cares, right? So I think that's where this kind of negotiation is happening, but somebody's going to do it, and the amount that it's going to take away the independence and accessibility that these guys treasure so much is going to be really interesting. And I would say, just again, building on the athlete side of it, where does the innovation come from there? We're kind of tapped out on all this.
Yeah.
Oh, tell us about the locker room. What do you remember? Oh, how crazy was so-and-so? That stuff's, it's replaceable. It doesn't really cut through anymore. Like, who is going to take the personality of an athlete and continue to make them the focus, but in a way that is still like innovative creatively? I think that like these athletes kind of are just the guys now. Like, we just have to be used to that. Pablo Torre is a unicorn. It's probably not going to be another Pablo Torre. It's going to be another Cam Newton or another Gilbert Arenas, more likely. And so who has just actually wants to try something new that happens to have been an athlete? I think that's going to probably be the next breakthrough, would be my guess. So those are the two things I'm on. I mean, what about you? You just said you're tapped out. You listen to so many of these. What do you think's coming?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's coming. I think the paywall thing, I mean, in some ways, like, it's already here. Like, Howard Stern is effectively behind a paywall. I know that with when Dan Le Batard left ESPN, there was a lot of thought he could wind up at Sirius. And as a Dan Le Batard listener, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, like, I'm going to have to find a way to get Sirius XM now. Like, I don't know. So, yeah, I agree. I guess it's coming.
And like Joe Rogan's done it, right? Like, I guess when I say paywall, like, those big shows can afford to do it, right? Like, people are going to chase Rogan and Stern. Those are like two of, if we're about to get to our Mount Rushmore for sports, those are two on the Mount Rushmore of all time media, period. But like, when I say paywall, it's probably not going to be entirely exclusive, but some kind of, hey, it airs first on this and then it goes to YouTube 2 days later or something, right? Like, somebody is going to be sucked into a subscription service where fans have to go there if they want it. I think that's just inevitable at this point. But or some version of a deal. I mean, I don't know, but I think that's too obvious for a Netflix or an Amazon or whoever at this point, that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of who it is and what form it takes. Do you want to get to our Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, let's get to the Mount Rushmore. So we're going to do a Mount Rushmore of podcasts, of sports media podcasters, I guess, probably figures in the industry.
Yep.
And
this is all time, right? Like, so bigger picture than just this year.
Right, correct. And so we're going to do a collective one, because I think there are two spots that are pretty solidified. I think there's a third that is pretty firm. Although if there was a stronger alternative, I'd be open to ideas. And then the fourth, like, I had trouble. I don't really have a strong fourth. Like, I have a handful of options, but there is not.
Tell me those three you just said, because I had already messaged you. I think there's three locks already, and I wasn't sure if you would agree, but now it sounds like you do. So it makes me curious if they're the same, or if we think they're locks and they're different.
So my locks are Pardon My Take and Bill Simmons. Those are my two, like, stone cold locks. Like, I'm not doing this list if they aren't on it. My firm third is Pat McAfee. And
so we're on 100% the same page.
Okay. So Pat Pat, I struggle with because I've just never thought of Pat as a podcast. I've always thought of Pat as like a live show. I never knew anybody who listened to the Pat McAfee show as a podcast. I know people who watched it on YouTube and on FanDuel and now on ESPN, but I never knew anybody who's like, oh yeah, I'm catching up on yesterday's Pat McAfee. So that's the only reason I have him as like a distant third behind Simmons and pardon my take, because I think those two are more true to the form. Whereas I feel like Pat is just doing a show that also happens to be on a podcast.
And I think you're right. Like, Spotify has recently re-added numbers to its app where you can see how they have to be a certain size. It doesn't show you if a podcast has 8 listens or something, but like Pat rarely breaks like 25, 50K on Spotify versus some of these shows like Bill Simmons. Obviously that's kind of the home for his show, but like he'll break 1 million or 400,000 or whatever. So yeah, it's a YouTube show. It's an ESPN television product at this point, but I just think like the spirit of what we're talking about here is digital audio and video. And that is still what Pat is. And so, yeah, I think that McAfee has to be on there. Yeah, pardon my take. It's like both of their heads carved into one chunk of the mountain. I think you just have to have
maybe just Hank's
Big
head.
Cat.
Maybe just Hank.
Sure. Or some kind of Sora generated amalgamation of PFT and Big Cat together, whatever that might look like. One half has sunglasses, the other doesn't. I don't know. Yeah, and then Simmons, which we already, sang his praises plenty. So who did you like? Who, if I made you pick a fourth right now, who, gun to your head, is it?
So what I struggle with is I do feel like there needs to be a former athlete on the list. And I know we have Pat. But but Pat could be doing the Pat McAfee show without his NFL career. Like Pat is not there because of he's a
talent. Yeah.
Right. And so, Pat, I guess there is representation there. But again, like I feel like he doesn't really embody that aspect of it. And so I went down the list. Do you know who is like largely credited with the first athlete podcast?
The Knuckleheads?
From what I found, it was AJ Hawk. AJ Hawk had something called the Hawkcast that started in 2014, which is pretty early in the game for all of this. Everybody else was like 2017 on. If I was going to go the athlete route, though, I think the two I would be debating between are JJ Redick, because I found a Wikipedia page that was like former athlete podcasts or athlete podcasts. JJ Redick had like 5 podcasts. Like he was very clearly going for it. At some point in 2016, he decided I need to have a podcasting presence. He had a show called The Vertical. He had the JJ Redick podcast. He had The Old Man and the Three, which was obviously, I think, his most successful one. And then Mind the Game. Like JJ Redick really went for it. And I think he embodies at least what I'm going for. And then the other one would be Shannon Sharp, just because I think he reached heights that maybe nobody else reached. So I guess gun to head, I'd probably say Shannon Sharp, especially, if not for everything that went down earlier this year, who knows? I think he'd probably be the no-brainer.
Yeah, that obviously is hard to just remove from my brain just because his relevancy has taken a hit. It just isn't talked about because there's a kind of a black cloud over his operation right now. He also left the volume and is kind of just going it alone and all that. But he definitely came to mind for me. Part of it, though, separating from the legal saga and all that this year would just be, too, though, that he already, he was the guy on CBS and Undisputed before he ever even launched a podcast. Like, his podcast career, Shannon's, is, within the past 5 years or so, really. Like, I think he launched Club Shay Shay during COVID, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very recent for a guy who's in his 60s, so that gives me pause. The other people that I thought of, Matthew Berry, I think is an interesting one. I think he also kind of brings the podcast spirit to, the ESPN Plus show he had was kind of goofy and zany and podcasty, and the NBC show he does now is, it's fantasy football. It's kind of hard not to be. Plus the main one on ESPN that's changed names a couple times. So I like him. Fantasy football, like, just kills on the podcast charts. Like, there's 10 of those in the top 50, no matter when you look. I think Bomani Jones was kind of a pioneer doing that kind of thing, and still has a pretty big audience. That's kind of all he's currently doing in sports media is his podcast for Wave. Katie Nolan came to mind. Like, again, similar to Matthew Berry, like a lot of the projects she's done have felt like podcasts, even if they weren't. Like the Garbage Time, the late night show on ESPN. Now she's just doing a podcast for Sirius. That kind of embodies like the spirit of what I'm talking about. So you went have another athlete. I felt like Pat filled that niche. So I was thinking we need like a creature of the internet type of person, like an actual host and commentator type. But it could go either way. Like, I think Shannon's valid. I think JJ's valid. Those three would be my other suggestions.
Well, the other thing I'd kind of default to, I think, innovation here and trailblazers when it comes to this. And so the other names that popped up for me were Dan Le Batard, who you could say followed the Simmons model a little bit, but he had a terrestrial radio show and really pivoted it to podcasting. And so I think there's something to be said for that, because I think a lot of people wound up following that model. I also think
making a local show national by posting it as a podcast. Yeah.
Right. And you look at all the talents that have kind of come up under that brand. I think there's something to be said there. I think Zach Lowe, like the idea that we have this incredible NBA writer and he disappears, after he gets laid off, and people miss his podcast more than anything else. And like, I think Zach Lowe is way better known for the Low Post than or the Zach Lowe Show or whatever it's called now, than he is anything else. I think with this year that Pablo Torre has had, like, I think he's definitely in the conversation. And it's like, hey, like, this is showing that like podcasting isn't just like kind of this quirky thing that younger people are listening to. Like, real actual journalism can live here. Like, I think Pablo has a case. So I don't know. It's a lot of strong contenders, but also none across, all probably 20 of the names you and I just Men in Blazers, Spit and Chicklets. Like, there are these shows that have kind of like, if you follow hockey, you listen to Spit and Chicklets. If you follow soccer, you listen to Men in Blazers. Like, there are these shows that have just embodied entire sports, like, and become primary tools in the way people follow those. So I don't have like a lot of conviction about this. I think really almost any of the names we just listed off are like up there.
You have a good case. Well, big surprise. We end up back on Dan Le Batard here on the play-by-play. But, like, that's a good case. I had been discounting radio people because I just think that's radio. So, like, even Bomani, to me, obviously you could throw Colin Cowherd's name out, Le Batard. Those are radio people. It's a little different. So maybe that disqualifies. Maybe that cuts Le Batard and Bomani off, former radio co-hosts together, if we're paring this down. So I think those sport-specific people deserve a lot of credit. That's kind of what the list is for. They don't belong on the Mount Rushmore. So I feel like we're choosing between two of these people would really enrage a lot of folks in Katie Nolan, Shannon Sharpe, and JJ Redick. If we just want to blow over and not have anybody pay any attention, we would just put JJ Redick on there. Like, nobody's feelings are going to be hurt by JJ Redick being on this list, but the other two are a little bolder takes. I would and Matthew Berry. He would not make anybody mad either.
Yeah, I don't know. Having 5 white guys on our sports Mount Rushmore, though,
isn't it 4? Mount Rushmore's 4, right?
Yeah, but we got 2 from the Pardon My Take guys.
Oh, yes. Okay, so yeah, I agree with that. I think we can think a little bigger here, but I think with Shannon, he's not a podcaster. Like, he is now, but he was on TV.
But neither's McAfee. Neither's McAfee. Yeah. It's tough. It's I think it has to be.
This? No one's in the chat chirping and speaking up with their votes. We could put it as a poll. We could have an open 4th slot in our graphic, and then let people vote on it. Do we want to do that?
I think so. I think it's like,
okay.
Let's take that cop out. Let's say these 3 are solidified. Who is the fourth? Who belongs on here? We'll take some feedback. You and I will circle back. We'll do a show on Monday and we'll circle back and figure this thing out, because I need some time to think about this, because our imaginary sports podcasting Mount Rushmore is too important to me to let this hang.
It's going to exist in perpetuity, and there's no going back, and we'll be judged on it for the rest of our lives. So I think we have to take it with that level of seriousness. So yeah, okay, we'll put it on the Awful Announcing X account, which I'm sure people follow. You can vote there. Yep. Chime in with your fave. We'll consider them, or most likely we will not. And then we'll finalize the 4th and /5th final face on the mountain. Sounds good.
Yep. We'll get a nice little AI graphic for it too. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Play-by-Play. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will be back with you next week, breaking down all the latest in sports media.